Hey YouTube, Do Yourself Junkie 369 here today, and it is officially day 3. I had to think about what day the kit came in of our RV10 build. And we're starting on the Epinage kit, and I haven't read the instructions too closely, but in a second I'll tell you what we're starting work on. Basically, the plans that come with the kit, the first several sections, you can find them online and download them PDF and read them. It's how to do electrical, how to do fittings, how to do riveting, how to drill out rivets, which is an important section to read, how to deburr, how to do tank sealant, anything you could really need, or at least a good place to start learning how to build an airplane is in the front sections. And then electrical, how to set up headsets, electrical interference. So in section 6 of these plans, that is where my son is wanting to use that hammer really bad on something. Anyway, section 6, that's where you start with the vertical stabilizer. So hopefully here today we will be working on the vertical stabilizer of the Epinage kit, and I've put that up on the screen and highlighted it so you know exactly what part we're working on. And as I said, day 3. Now this is 11 by 17 inches. It's already punched for 3-ring binder. I could have sworn Vans used to send a 3-ring binder. I've unpacked the kit as you see in the other video, and it is definitely not in there. So in the description I'll include a link where to buy one of these on Amazon, obviously. They don't normally carry these in Walmart or Staples or Office Depot, but you'll definitely want to pick up one of those. I went with the 3-inch. This would actually fit in a 1-inch, but as I get additional kits, I'm going to put them in the same binder, so I don't want to have to take out the old instructions to put the new instructions in. I'll just add them to the binder as I go. That way, later on, if I need something, it's all in one place. In addition to that, this morning, part of what I worked on is I had finished the inventory of the kit. As I showed in the last video, I was working on that. There was 2 parts missing, so I called up Vans this morning, told them what was missing. They said they would ship it after they asked my building number, builder number and what address to ship it to. Hopefully we don't need those. I don't think we'll need those parts tonight, because one of them is a bag of rivets, and there's quite a few steps before you get to riveting. So it was real easy. I put it down in the build tracker as 0.1 of an hour, which is 6 minutes. It probably didn't even take that long, but I wanted to track that time. I put it under admin. So after I checked off everything, I will be keeping this, and I'll show you real quick. I took out the sub kits out of the crate, and I kind of have them sorted and stacked there. On the end, there's some fairings and long pieces that were by themselves not part of a sub kit. But then you can see sub kit 2 stacked up, sub kit 5, I didn't necessarily put them in order, sub kit 1 and all its pieces, and down there sub kit 9 and sub kit 4 stacked on the shelves. And then down here I have sub kit 8, I believe, and then sub kit 9 is just kind of taking up the whole table because it consists of some really long pieces. And then the pieces that were too long to fit on the shelves under the tables, I kind of leaned up in a corner. And then there's a couple, what I'm guessing are spar pieces that are so long that they can't even stand up in my garage. I just have those kind of laying in the box. And after I inventoried the skins, I carefully placed them back in the box and left them there for now. And as I start using some of the skins and emptying the box out, I'll probably take the skins out of the box, set them somewhere carefully, and place the box outside to be ripped apart and recycled, burned in the fireplace, something, whatever I decide to do with it. And then down on this table, I kind of have my tools and my fasteners, which I don't have any sort of organizer for fasteners yet, and I felt like it was just a better idea to keep them in the original bags for now, because those are labeled, and those labels match with the inventory list, which I'm going to keep handy. That way, anytime it calls out a part in the plans, if I can't find it, I can go to that inventory list, know what subkit it is, or what fastener bag it is, and go there and immediately find it without spending a whole bunch of time looking around. That's what we have so far. And then reading into the instructions a little bit last night to see what I would need to do today if I started building, I realized that there was a couple tools that I didn't quite have. Oh, there's also a tool list here in one of the sections before section 6. It will tell you a list of generic tools that you need, and it can be pretty extensive, and some of it's probably not needed. I know I'm going to be cutting 2 pieces of aluminum today, so I'll need some hacksaw blades. If you don't have a hacksaw, or if you want to, you can go and get a band saw with a metal blade, or a jigsaw, or something like that. But I went just old hand-powered hacksaw, and I got some blades, new blades for using that are particularly fine tooth. In the plans it calls out a fine tooth of 32 teeth per inch. All I could find was 24 teeth per inch, and it looks fairly fine. It might not work on some of the sheet metal pieces, but the pieces I'm cutting tonight are fairly thick, and I think this will work just great. Then you want to pick up something to mark your pieces, depending on if you're cutting, drilling holes. There's some holes that aren't already pre-punched, so you have to locate those and drill them. You'll want to use ultra fine. Don't just get fine, they're not fine enough. Ultra fine, which is like pin tip. And there's an example of what it looks like. Permanent magic markers. And you'll mark on this, and just be aware, any place that you mark, it'll bleed through primer and paint. So if it's somewhere that you care about being able to see that, you'll want to wipe it off with some acetone or something. The flip side of that is, you don't want to use a scribe, because that'll create an etched line, which is basically a giant crack waiting to happen. It'll create a stress concentration point, which is kind of counterproductive when you just spent forever deburring something. So you don't want to use a scribe or anything to etch metal, which is kind of opposite of what I was taught during the machine shop class that I took in college. And then you also don't want to use a pencil. And what I found out by reading the front matter in the Vans instruction manual here is pencil lead causes aluminum to corrode. I didn't know that. It's pretty weird. It reacts with the aluminum somehow. So pick these up. I'll put a link, obviously. You'll need them almost immediately. I think they were about $2. For when you get to using your drill, which is almost immediately, it usually does not come with an air fitting. You can get these, which are steel, I believe, or you can get brass. Brass, I've heard you could screw it right into the tool, no other prep needed. With steel or aluminum, I've always been told you have to put some plumber's tape around it, and I'll show how to do that later as part of like the tool prep, I guess. So there's that. You'll want to pick up that if you don't have it. Almost immediately you have to drill some 1/8 and some 3/16 inch holes, which are normal size drill bits that you probably have laying around the house, but I wanted to make sure to get sharp ones that aren't coated in drywall dust and whatever else that I was drilling on. So I just went ahead and bought 2 new ones. They'll probably need to be replaced because they're dull halfway through the project. And then you'll need some sort of center punch. I just went and got a normal one that you hit with a hammer. There's automatic ones, and I'll put a link for both, and you can decide which one to get. The automatic one, you just put it on your mark and push down, and it has a spring-loaded trip that the point will depress into the punch and then release a spring-driven hammer basically that strikes it and marks, or hits the pin hard enough to leave a mark. This one you actually have to sit it there and hit it with a hammer. So two-handed, where the other can actually be almost one hand. I like the automatic, I just couldn't find one, and I didn't want to sit around waiting for it, waiting to start my build because I'm waiting for it. So I picked up this one. I'll put a link for both types. And the great part about a center punch is it'll allow you to exactly mark where you want to drill your hole, and it'll leave a little divot. That divot's great because then when you start drilling your hole, your drill bit tip will sit down in that divot instead of walking all over the metal, leaving tracks basically, which I'm sure we're probably all familiar with. You try to drill something, it's slick, it's hard, and the drill bit walks off, leaving a track of where it was spinning the whole time. And not only does it make the part look ugly, to me that just screams same thing as scribing. Now you've created like high stress concentration areas where there's gouges, and that could lead to cracks later. So definitely want some sort of center punch. And then working on the tables, I realized I no longer have a straight edge, so I just picked up a real cheap metal ruler. You'll also need a ruler for marking stuff, but it'll have to have both fractional inch and decimal inch. So 3/8, 16th, those type of marks, but it'll also need 0.1, 0.2 type marks. And those, I'll put a link to one to pick up. So that's it tool wise. And I'll start my stopwatch here and get into working on this. And this part will just be sped up where you can watch. And once in a while I might stop and say something, but other than that, just got to dive right in and start doing it, and hopefully I don't mess up. The first step's a biggie, where I've actually got to mark and cut something. And if I ruin the piece, the price of the piece won't be too expensive, but the shipping might cost me an arm and a leg. So let's get started. So I've got my cell phone here, and I am going to start the stopwatch. So that was fairly easy. First step calls for part VS1014. There's two of them. A quick look at my inventory sheet showed me they were part of subkit 8. I went to the pile of subkit 8 and found them. So next we have to follow the instructions, which is to mark them a certain way and cut them. And at that point they'll become 1014 right and 1014 left. So you got to make sure not to make them identical. Other than that, there's a little bit of a bend to them, which it talks about clamping. So you'll need some clamps, just normal, whatever it needs to clamp to your table. So about, if you don't have a lip on your table, which I read a lot of tips that said make sure you put a lip on your table. That was after I had built my two tables. So if you don't have a lip, you're going to need some 6-inch clamps to clamp these down or together. If you do have a lip, you can get away with about a 2-inch clamp. I've heard this stuff is really hard to remove if you leave it on parts too long. I gotta say, straight out of the kit, it's fairly easy to peel off. So these have a bend to them, and the plans say to place them back to back and clamped them together to take the bend out. And I was going to use some big clamps, but this is a perfect use for these clamps that are activated by the Cleco pliers. They're small, have a pretty high clamping force, and will fit right in there. And then I'll use the taller ramps, or the taller clamps, my woodworking clamps, clamp this to the workbench as I'm cutting it.
7, 8.
Basically, by clamping it together, you're making sure that the curve is not affecting what you draw or cut, because you want that to be perfectly straight.
Flash.
So,
And mine was?
turns out that one of these flanges is longer than the other, and I just marked the wrong one. So I want to cut the material from the long flange. Somehow as I was clamping them together, I put the long flanges together, which makes it pretty hard to cut them. So, luckily I reread the instructions before cutting anything. So read it 3 or 4 times, mark whatever pieces you need to, and then go back and read it again before you start modifying any pieces, and make sure that everything is right. And I should have realized something was wrong, because to mark the distance I need to mark, the line I need to mark, it was running into the curve of the flange instead of perfectly, or having enough space left over to make the cut line that I was supposed to be making. So luckily I caught that. Okay, so once you get it cut, it's got a real horrible burr on it pretty much no matter what you use. So you want a set of files, round file, flat file. You might need a round, like a rat tail file later, I don't know. And you want a wire brush or a file card to be able to clean those before use, or after use, or to keep them cutting new. And you just, I'll put a link for files and a wire brush, like everything else in the description. And to make it easier on me, you could put in a vise, but I used a wood block set inside and then just clamped it to my table. I cut just above the line the whole way down this, so I'll probably have a bit more filing to do, but I wanted to be fairly precise with that, and I was afraid if I cut too close to the line, if my cut went offline, then I'd accidentally take out some of the material that I need to leave. If I was using a bandsaw, I probably could be a little bit more accurate with this cut. Okay, so I've finished shaping this with the file. Now it's time to deburr it. It's got a really bad burr on there. If you drag your finger from the inside of the web to the edge, you'll feel it catching, almost sharp. And to start that deburring process, you can use the file, and instead of cutting perpendicular to the teeth, which would be this direction, you can cut kind of with the teeth and real light pressure to basically smooth out all the gouges on the edge you filed. And then to get rid of the burr, you can just real lightly run the file down the edge like this. And you're not trying to put a visible chamfer on the edge, you're just trying to peel that burr off of there. On the inside it would be a little bit harder. Kind of do it like that. And then even after I do this, I'll probably break out the deburring tool I bought and run it across there. So first up is I'm going to smooth out this edge. Same test, you'll be able to pull your finger over there and feel when there's no burr. But like I said, even with doing that with the file, I'll probably get some sandpaper and sand on this to take some of the file marks out, and then also go maybe even use the deburring tool and smooth down that edge. And basically the instructions say to deburr it so you're not marking up your piece that this nests inside of, but also don't want to leave any of those stress concentration points I was describing earlier. And this is where the 3M wheel that cost $100 and goes on your grinder would save me some time, because I could just put it on there, run it along there, and be done. It's that quick. I'm going to break out the deburring tool. And the one I got uses replaceable blades, so there's different blades you can get put in there. They also make disposable ones. I'm not sure how long they'll last on aluminum. I've used them for quite a while on projects. I have a couple disposable ones and I've never needed to replace one. So that goes in there, and they make different blades. And usually it's shaped in a particular way, so you want to hold this along the edge and draw it towards you, is the way it's meant to be used. If you try to go the other way, and you might not be able to see it on camera, but it is pulling up just a real faint shaving. And that's basically that burr coming off of there. And you only need to do it about one pass per edge. The only part that this tool doesn't work so well is on short surfaces like this, and that's where Scotch-Brite pads, sandpaper, almost anything else will work in there. And if you left a real heavy burr with that file, it was hanging up and chattering. So there, it's real good just to take the file, knock that initial burr down, and then go back with the tool. And that finishes up step one. So I'm going to go and put a check mark next to it and move on to step two. And basically that way I can make notes, marks in here. If I have to stop mid-step or something, I can come back and know exactly where I'm at and what's been completed. And if I have to pass over something because I'm missing a part or a tool, I can flag it. I'm going to get some flags. I'll show you those later. And that way it'll stick out from the folder and show me like, hey, that's where I need to go back to. And I might even make a bookmark too, so I can close the folder and keep the plans nice. And that way something in the garage doesn't get spilled on it or just dust collecting on it, make it nasty. And for that, I'm just going to use a normal gel ink pen. So in this step, the pieces we made go into the rear spar cap, or sorry, those are the rear spar caps. Those go into the rear spar and get nestled there, and then you drill some holes. So since we're going to get into drilling and using our first aircraft specific tool, I need to set it up and do a review video on it so you guys will know what the heck I'm using and why I chose it. Yet again, because we don't have any holes, we're using these Cleco style clamps. Here it's pretty important to know terminology. So it's saying to drill the rear spar cap to match the rear spar, doing every fourth flange hole, or not flange hole, web hole. So this section in here is the web. These sections here that stick out are the flange. So this is the side that gets the 1/8 inch holes. The flange is the number 30 holes. So that's important. That is covered in the front matter of the plans on how to build an aircraft. They cover terminology like that. Basically, we clamp it and then drill. That way we can start putting Clecos in here. So day one, you're probably going to need your 1/8 inch Clecos. And to start out, I only ordered 25 of these, but I might have a builder who's nearing completion of his kit, or actually two builders, that will have these by the ton, and they've already told me I can buy them from them by the pound, which is probably a lot better deal than going to the link in the bottom of the video. So look around for stuff like that. But if you can't find them somewhere used, go ahead and get them from my link. So basically, I'll show you a close-up of this. And these are color coded, so later on when you get them all out of the bag, you have to remember copper color is 1/8 inch. So here is the tip of it, and as you can see, when you extend this out, they kind of suck together so that they can fit in this hole. So they just barely fit in there, and then as you release it, it draws up and clamps that assembly together. So really at this point we could either move this clamp or take it out completely. But I'll drill a couple more and clip it on before I remove this clamp, just to be safe. And drilling, you want to put some down pressure on it, but not too much, because when you finally go through the material, you don't want to jam the rotating chuck into the metal and gouging it up. So that's why, even though that drill is capable of such high speed, right now, as I get a feel for drilling through this, I'm kind of holding back a little bit and running kind of partial throttle. Okay, so this is the deburring tool for holes that I use. You can also get some that attach to a drill bit, but then you run the risk of over chamfering the hole. Basically, you'll, instead of just deburring it, you'll end up with a chamfer and basically a countersink if you use too much pressure and do it too much. So I like the hand tool with the offset. It's kind of like a speed handle. So you just go up here and give each one about 3 turns with some light pressure and knock that burr off. And I feel like this tool is fast enough that switching to a power tool would not benefit you in any way. So now we're should have about every other hole clecoed. So you'll need about 30 clecos for that step. And now you're going to go in and drill the flange holes with a number 40 bit and cleco as you go on there as well. So just to do this one part, we're at 30 clecos. I'm guessing you would need about 70 clecos total for this. So got to switch out our bit to number 40 and drill the flange hole. That's step 3. Usually when I'm chucking drill bits up, the flutes end about here. I go just above that. That way I'm minimizing the amount of drill bit sticking out, maximizing the amount that's engaged by the jaws of the chuck, which seems to usually end up with less of them breaking this way, it seems. And they are engaged more and seem to be less of a chance of getting them in there wrong. And just like before, I'm going to start down here at the bottom of the spar and work my way up. And since this is a number 40, you'll need to use the 3/32 clecos. So you need about 30 1/8 inch clecos for the 1/8 inch holes, and then you'll need about 40 of these 3/32 clecos here on the side. What I'm doing is I'm drilling a hole here next to where I have it clecoed. I put the cleco in, and then I drill the next hole, and then I move the cleco over. That way I'm alternating. Every other hole is clecoed, so I'm not using a ton of clecos to hold this together. There's nothing wrong with clecoing every hole, especially when you're making new ones, but I didn't buy a whole bunch of clecos, so I'm trying to use them sparingly, but at the same time keep the part secure enough. And every other hole should be more than enough to hold this in place. So when I removed the spar cap for this step, I moved the cleco up one hole. This hole I haven't run a drill bit through, so when I'm taking the burrs out of here, so the parts made up flush with each other, in step 3, basically I don't have to go any further than this. Later these holes will get deburred, but it'll be after I match drill the skins. which I'm pretty sure at that point I'll probably have to go and re-deburr all these. Right now you're just taking the burr off, so when you put the pieces together, there's no burrs keeping them from mating up flush. And so I really don't want to deburr some holes that I don't need to deburr yet. So I love this tool, but I'm going to have to figure out something different for ones inside a narrow flange like this. So when I try to go and rotate the tool, I can't. Mainly because of this flange right here, this opposing flange. Well, and the other part is, with this offset bit here, once I get down here in the rotation, I won't be able to spin it anymore. So I might take a drill bit and stick it in there and just give it a twist. That's normally, when I went through a machine shop, that's normally how I would deburr stuff. I'd just get a really large diameter drill bit or maybe a chamfer tool and just stick it in there and give it a twist to knock the burr off. So got the outside done. Still need to do the inside, clean that up, get all the chips out of there. But I'll switch over to doing these for right now and come back to that later. Here I've changed over to using about a 3/8. I think this is a 3/8. I can't read it anymore. Anyway, large diameter drill bit, because even on this flange here, the tool I have is a little bit too large of a diameter to allow it to sit square in the hole. So it's not chamfering, but it's not knocking the burr off of the inside edge of the hole. So you just need to put this in here and give it a quick spin. At this point, you should probably be asking yourself whether or not you just are wanting to prime the plane or not. And basically, I'm planning on priming, even though I don't live near any oceans or saltwater. I do live in an area where there's pretty high humidity. And actually, somebody who researches this quite a bit is telling me that this area is probably higher humidity than most other places in the U.S. Which is kind of surprising. He said we definitely have higher humidity here year-round than a place like Miami. And I know my cars, or well, not just my cars, but everybody's cars seems to rust out from under them. I always thought that was partially due to them salting the roads every winter, but there might be something to the humidity during the summer causing it as well. Because there's a car that I never really drive in the winter, and it seems like it's just, since it's come here, it's picked up rust that I have to continually watch out for and go and make sure I kill it before it spreads to the rest of the vehicle. I didn't put which size bit this is in the description or anything like that. It's just a drill bit that's like maybe 4 times the diameter of the hole that you're trying to deburr. Just whatever you have laying around. Don't necessarily go out and buy a drill bit just for this task. Almost anything will work as long as it's a bit designed for metal. And the 135 degree, or basically the shallower the point, the better, in my mind. You push down, twist, and as you're twisting, release the pressure. This is an area where real fine sandpaper or the red Scotch-Brite pad or the 3M wheels would probably be the quickest way to go if you wanted to speed up, well, get a better access to inside the flange and get rid of those burrs there. But this smaller diameter drill bit seems to be doing the trick as well. There's like 100 different ways to skin a cat. Some are better than others, and everybody's going to argue that their way is the only correct way and that your way is wrong, or that you shouldn't be skinning cats, period. I guess there's that argument to be made as well. So with Clecoing that back together after deburring, I think we've completed step 3. And I don't know how accurate it is, but I feel like I'm making a lot of progress here in a very short amount of time, day-wise. I'm just doing a couple hours a night after work. Still working on the vertical stabilizer, and I got my binder in. This is a 11 by 17 binder, 3-inch with slant D-rings. This is probably about the best type of setup for holding these plans. Right now, like I said, you could go with the 1-inch, but if you get the 3-inch, when you get the plans for the other kits, you can add them in here and they'll fit. And this will keep paper from blowing around and getting messed up. So we're well on our way into step 4. This is all the pieces you put together before you start match drilling everything to a number 30, which is just over the 1/8 inch that you drilled earlier. And some of these holes don't get drilled out the same, so pay quite close attention to that. And then once I drill these, final drill, I'll go through and label these top and bottom. That way, when you reinstall these brackets, just in case the holes are slightly different from the top and bottom, they will be matched up. You probably saw me drill on these hinge brackets. That was with a number 30, or sorry, an 1/8 inch bit. And some of the powder coating was keeping me from attaching it with the Clecos. So I had to drill that out just slightly so the Cleco would fit through it. And after the 1/8 inch, it gets drilled with the number 30 drill bit, which is larger than an 1/8 inch. So removing a little bit without it being lined up on the assembly won't hurt. Now it's time to drill out to a number 30 drill bit. You're going to be using a lot of these, so go ahead and just buy the 6-pack to start with. They're fairly cheap. And every time you get one doll, unless you already own a drill doctor and know how to use it, don't bother trying to save these and sharpen them, just throw them in the trash. If you do have a drill doctor, get 1 or 2 and then just sharpen it. It'll save you a little bit money, but the money saved is not worth buying a drill doctor just for this project. So on this step, you want to drill up to a number 30 on all the top, middle, and bottom hinge brackets, as well as all the holes in the hinge doubler up here. So all those get drilled. And then all the 1/8 inch holes of the spar caps and spar doubler, which pretty much, except for, well, basically every hole on here gets drilled out to a number 30, except for these 2 and these 2. And then these 3 up here. Everything else, go ahead and drill it. So, the way they worded it is kind of weird. I had to read it a couple times to make sure I'm getting it right. But now that I have it, I know that everything gets drilled. And you want to make sure to get it perpendicular, especially when you're going through the doubler, the spar, and the hinge bracket. That's a lot of material to get off track, and you want to make sure you're perpendicular. Here, where the hinge brackets are, the holes, you have to the Cleco 2 of the holes of each bracket, and then drill the others, and then swap the Clecos around. But the holes are so tight together that the drill is hitting on the Cleco, and that will push the drill off perpendicular. So I recommend getting a long drill bit. This one's a 12-inch one. Obviously links down in the video description because I used it during this video. And this was one of the first tools I picked up in that initial buy, and I didn't think I was going to need it, and I probably could have held off on it, but this is the perfect tool for getting in there without the drill getting kicked off at an angle. You might have noticed I only moved some of the Clecos, and basically what it was is I moved the Clecos that were holding the rudder brackets and then drilled those out. So I drilled those with the long drill bit, shifted them, drilled the freed up ones with the long drill bit, and then I went back and I moved all the other Clecos, and basically I just shifted them down one. So now I know I need to drill the holes just above each of these sets of Clecos. And these are rudder brackets, so all the holes around them are already drilled. And then the only set that's different is the ones down here at the bottom. These Clecos used to be here, so I need to drill that set of holes. And that should complete step 4. And I switched back to a regular number 30 drill bit because this one was a single drill bit purchase. I want to say it was a couple bucks. I want to use it sparingly so that it hopefully lasts the whole build without needing a replacement due to it getting dull, especially since it's match drilling through some steel parts here on the rudder brackets. The other part is, with it being really long, it's real easy, for me at least, it seems easier for the drill to get out of perpendicular to the material. So I don't like drilling with it that much. Now onto step 5, which is a short one. Basically drill these 2 holes out to 3/16. And that's not the final dimension, they're just having you pre-drill them. Which I don't quite understand, drilling a number 8 and then stepping up to a number 30, or not a number 8, but a drilling an 1/8 inch and then stepping up to a number 30, but I'm sure there's good reasons for it. So best bet is just to follow the plans. Like they knew what they were doing when they wrote these. Maybe I'm kind of biased because part of my job is to come up with procedures and have them written down. And usually I don't put anything in there that I don't have a good reason for. Make sure I got the right drill bit here. Yep, 3/16. So we'll do that, and oh actually that's step 5. We'll do that and we're done with step 5. And always make sure you got your chuck lock down, and then always give it a spin, because if the drill bit's in there crooked, you'll see it wobble. And doesn't seem likely when you are careful about doing it, but every once in a while I'll get one in there crooked. Normally, to me, it happens when I'm using a drill press. And right before I drill, reread the step, make sure I'm doing it the right thing. Match drill, attach bolt holes, the rear spar and the rear spar doubler, and the bracket in the caps. Upper attach bolt holes. So specifically upper only. So there's 2 down here and 2 up here, and they're actually called out on the plans. Basically, machine countersink all the holes in the spar doubler below those attach holes. So all the holes down here, which you'd use this countersink cutter. The only deal is, when I made my initial purchase, I meant to buy a number 30, and somehow I ended up buying a number 40, which you'll need both probably, but I meant to buy the number 30 first. And so I went to do this step and I have the wrong tool and I don't have the correct one. So I've ordered it. It'll be here in a couple days. Luckily, I order most of my stuff from Aircraft Tool Supply, and with their cheap shipping, usually I get stuff in about 2 days. So that should be here Monday, since tomorrow is a Sunday, and I'll be able to finish that step. Not to worry though, because it's kind of a final step to machine countersink something. It's one of the finish items that you do, I know that those holes will be complete afterwards, which means that I'm able to skip that step and go on to something else in the plans, as long as it doesn't involve riveting those holes. And to make sure I know I skipped that step, you can use these flags. I put them in the description as well, link to buy them. And you can highlight the step. That way you have a flag sticking out, you know, like, hey, I skipped something on that page. You go back to that page and go, hey, this is what I skipped. You'll know instantly why you skipped it. Hopefully you remember that and you haven't skipped it that long. And so I'm going to mark it and then go on to page 6-3, which starts over at step 1. So it takes this assembly and builds on top of it. As I said, in case I've got to take this apart, which I mean I will have to deburr it, just a simple T for top will work. And then I'm not even going to put a B for bottom on the other one, because if it's not marked with a T for the top one, it automatically becomes the bottom one. Not that it'd take a whole bunch of extra time to do that. I just figure why bother. Since there's only 2 of each one, they're pretty distinct shape and size. I just need to differentiate one of them and can figure out what the other is by default. So we're skipping step 6, moving on to step 1 of the next page, which has us building up the actual rest of the frame for the vertical stabilizer. And first step is to find the parts and deburr them. I got tired of trying to brush all the shavings off, so not absolutely needed, but if you got an air compressor, might as well on this. I'm just using some 400 grit that I had laying around from another project to take any burrs off these areas that I can't get with my deburring tool. And my file is a little bit on the large and too coarse for this. And this seems about perfect. The only thing that would make this better is if I had like maybe a dowel rod or something to wrap it around so I could get it in here in some of these notches where they've done the folds. And deburring is going to knock some of that aluminum or alclad surface off, but which is the protective surface on here. But I plan on coating it with a primer, so don't have to worry about that too much. And I think that's part of the reason people should use primer even when they're not necessarily near the ocean or anything. But it's like as you deburr, you're removing some of that coating. And putting a good primer on there should just give you peace of mind that your plane is going to not need any sort of corrosion treatment in the near future. And in case you need to sell it, it has a slightly higher value. People are going to ask you like, hey, did you put primer on it? Is it primed? Or they might turn around and ask you like, hey, when's the last time you did any sort of corrosion prevention? And this might be about the most labor intensive thing or part of building an airplane, but just slow down and make sure you get every single burr off of here. I'm playing musical Clecos because I don't have enough 1/8 inch Clecos. Really, you would need the 30 you had yesterday plus another about 50 total. Final drill all the holes common to the parts in the skeleton using a number 30 drill bit. I think this is going to be another good spot to use the long drill bit. That way I can just reach in to spots like this, which you can't see. So I'll show you on this one. Basically there's the nose rib here, and this drill bit can reach all the way down there. If you try to use a normal length drill bit, the drill is going to be up against this rib and cocked off at an angle, causing you to drill a hole that isn't straight through the part. So definitely need that 12-inch number 30. It seems kind of pointless, or at least when I was buying the parts I couldn't imagine what I'd use it for, and it turns out it's used quite often on the vertical stabilizer, so you're going to need it right away. Up on this end, there's only 2 holes, which are both filled with Clecos. So to remove one Cleco and drill out that hole, I'm going to use one of the clamps and place it right next to the Cleco. That way the piece is still being held secure when I remove one Cleco. If you try to remove one Cleco and have nothing else holding it in place, the piece is going to twist around on that single Cleco. Well, I've kind of hit a point where I'm going to have to stop. It's getting a little bit late. I need to go put a kid in bed. But the other part is I ran out of 3/32 Clecos. I have 50 of them. I have like another 50 on order, which I'll probably need all of those, all 100, to get this vertical stabilizer put together. So I guess if you're making an initial purchase of Clecos, you need to plan on having 50 1/8" Clecos and 100 to 125 3/32 Clecos. So they're being shipped to me. They should be here Monday. I'm going to see if one of the local builders has any for sale, so I don't lose that much time working on this. So that'll probably wrap it up for this video. Next video will just be continuing the vertical stabilizer. Hope to see you for that video. And somewhere in there I'm also going to throw together a primer, self-etching primer comparison test, which should be pretty cool. Hopefully you guys will like that. And pretty soon and we'll also do a countersink setup with the micro stop. Once that gets in the mail, I still have those holes to drill, so that should be pretty informative. Hope to see you for the next videos. If you're wanting to get notified when I post those, go ahead and subscribe and hit the bell icon. And if you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button. If this has in some way convinced you or made that final little push, or you believe this series has helped you decide and given you enough information to go with the Vans aircraft, especially the RV10, if you need a 4-seat, it's probably the best out there in my mind. Go ahead and check the description. I'll have my builder number there. I can't remember if you need my name for it. If you do, just send me a private message. I'll respond with my name. And please submit that to Vans when you get your kit, your first kit. It only works on the original purchase, unfortunately. And as kind of a thank you, Vans will send me $100, which will help fund. I'll put it directly towards building this RV10. That way I can continue posting videos in a timely manner. Anyway, that's all I've got, and thanks for watching. I look forward to finishing us up hopefully this weekend, and as usual I'll keep my builder's log up to date and linked in the description right below the builder's number, so you can look at it, and if you need to, you can download that and adjust it and use it for your build. So feel free to take that. I put it up there so you guys can use it if you need to. And hopefully I'll give you a good idea of what tools you need, when, how soon in the build you need them, and kind of help you plan out your own builds. Okay. Thanks for watching.